All right, let's get right into it. A massive plunder case has just been filed against the vice president of the Philippines. Now, this isn't just another lawsuit. This is a huge test of the country's entire political and legal system. Really, the question is, can the law actually hold the second most powerful person in the nation to account? And you see this number, 650 million pesos. That's just one of the allegations we're talking about here. It's tied to the confidential funds at the heart of this complaint, but believe me, the total figures involved are absolutely staggering. So, this all brings us to the big question, the one we're really digging into today. When you charge a sitting vice president with a crime as serious as plunder, what actually happens next? Because we're about to see the point where the law, as it's written, collides head-on with cold, hard political reality. Okay, first things first. Let's get grounded in the actual complaint. What exactly is the vice president being accused of? Let's look at the allegations on the table. The complaint itself kicks off by invoking this really powerful idea. The people who filed it are framing this as more than just a legal issue. It's a moral one. They're basically saying that the country's top officials have to be held to the absolute highest standard possible. No exceptions. And the allegations, wow, they are extensive. We're talking about billions, with a B, in confidential funds stretching from her time as Davao City mayor to her role as vice president. And on top of that, you've got claims of billions in overpriced laptops, bribery, a couple billion in undeclared assets, and even gross incompetence. The sheer scale here is clearly meant to paint a picture of deep systemic corruption. Okay, so we have the charges. Now, here's where we pivot to the analysis. Because when the person being accused holds an office as powerful as the vice presidency, well, the whole game changes. Which leads us to the critical question, right? Does the fact that this is the vice president change everything? And the short answer is yes. Absolutely it does. And let me show you why. Just look at this comparison. It really lays out the two different worlds we're talking about in the justice system. For you or me, an arrest is possible, a trial can actually happen, and you'd hope for some kind of resolution. But for a sitting vice president, no arrest, no trial anytime soon, and forget about a swift resolution. It is just not an equal playing field. So this gets us into what you might call the unwritten rules of Philippine politics. We're going to break down how the system really works in a situation like this, and it's a lot different from what you'd read in a law book. Okay, at the heart of all this is a concept called functional immunity. Now, this isn't something written into the Constitution. It's a practical immunity. What it means is that our institutions, like the courts and the prosecutors, get extremely careful. They avoid making any big moves that could spark a huge political crisis. In a way, they're protecting the stability of the system itself. And that means the Ombudsman's office, the body that handles this case, suddenly has a very different set of priorities. Their number one goal becomes avoiding destabilization. Number two, avoid being called partisan. And number three, just contain the political damage. See, this isn't just about the law. It's about institutional self-preservation. And on top of all that, you have to remember just how incredibly high the legal bar is for plunder. You have to prove all four of these things. And that last one, a series of criminal acts, that's the real killer. It's what makes plunder different from just one act of graft. Trying to prove a whole pattern of criminal acts with solid evidence against a sitting VP, it's next to impossible. But hey, you don't have to take my word for it. Let's just look at history, because there is an absolutely clear, ironclad pattern for how these kinds of cases against top officials play out in the Philippines. And this timeline, man, it just spells it all out. You look at President Estrada, the cases against him only moved forward after he was kicked out of office. President Arroyo, she was arrested, but only after her term was over. Vice President Binay faced plunder cases his whole term, never got convicted. And President Duterte is only facing the ICC now that he's a private citizen. The pattern couldn't be clearer. Accountability comes after power is gone, not during. So, knowing all that, what's probably going to happen with this specific case? Let's do a realistic charge-by-charge breakdown based on how we know the system actually works. This scorecard pretty much lays it out. The charges that are the highest chance of moving forward are the boring ones, the technical, administrative cases based on audit reports. Why? Because there's low political drama. A specific graft charge like the overpriced laptops has a moderate chance if you can keep it narrow. But the really explosive stuff, the confidential funds, are a legal nightmare to prove. The bribery charge needs witnesses who will probably never testify. And plunder, the chance of that sticking to a sitting VP is almost zero.
So when you put it all together, what's the big takeaway here?
It's that this whole thing is about politics just as much as it is about the law, and probably a lot more. And this is maybe the most important thing to get. This complaint isn't really designed to get a quick conviction in a courtroom. Its real purpose is to be ammunition for the real battlefield, which is the political process of impeachment. It's a legal move with a purely political goal. There's this quote from the source material that it hits the nail on the head. Justice is not denied, it is postponed until it becomes irrelevant. That perfectly captures the system's strategy. It's not about saying no to justice. It's about delaying and dragging things out until the political moment is gone and the outcome hardly matters anymore. So you might be asking, then why even file the case? Well, because it's a strategic, long-term move. First, it officially puts all these allegations into the public record forever. Second, it builds a foundation for a potential prosecution years from now after she leaves office. And third, it forces other institutions to make a choice. Either they act on the complaint, or their silence looks a lot like complicity. So in the end, no, this case will not destroy a sitting vice president, but it will follow her. It's a legal and political cloud that's going to hang over her head, and that leaves us with the real question we should be asking. It's not about whether the evidence is strong enough. The real question is, when and if does power actually shift?